Well, while we're figuring out our audio, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome to our second panel discussion, where the topic is the concept of the Black male narrative. I'll be the moderator. My name is Jamillya Hardley. I'm Assistant Director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So thank you for joining us, and we'll go ahead and get started with introductions. Well, I'll start with Patrick. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your role here at the college, years, primary focus area, or job responsibility, and what does Black History Month mean to you personally?
Wow. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sure you can. You can hear me. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jamillya said, I'm Patrick Coleman. I'm not going to keep it formal. I'm going to be very informal. I'm the Veteran Success Coordinator. I've been with the college. This is my second round. Now going on 3 years, and it's been a challenge, but I enjoy working with the veterans. I'm a veteran myself, a 15-year military U.S. Army veteran, and I loved it. And my whole focus is to help the veteran eliminate a lot of the barriers that they encounter once they get out of combat or get out of the military coming into college, and not have that vehicle that would help them become successful in college, because they're dealing with a lot of the barriers out in the community that they face. So my job is to eliminate those barriers by giving them the on-campus and off-campus resources that they need to be successful. And if you ever look at the Maslow's philosophy, that mindset, then you know from basic needs to self-actualization is what my focus is, to remove those barriers so their focus is on their class. What Black history means to me, as an older Black male, Black history doesn't have the same significance it used to have. To me, it's kind of watered down because the intent may be good, but the efforts are not as good as the intent. So that's what it means to me. And I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrick. Dave.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks, Jamillya, for the invitation. I really appreciate it. My name is Dave Selmon. I'm the Dean of Strategic Outreach and currently acting as the Interim Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So that is a job I'm currently doing as well. With addition to Bridges to College, I'm sort of overseeing that summer bridge program that consists of about close to 400 students. I also am director of adult ed, which we serve about 250 non-English speaking students of our community. And I also do have a focus as far as my recruitment job, my strategic outreach job. I have a GRPS focus where I focus on recruiting that are representative GRPS students. And we probably bring in about 750 students a year from GRPS through an initiative that Dr. Pink initiated when he was here, when he was president. So Black history, what it means to me is basically a reminder of the struggle. A reminder of the struggle that we went through as to get where we are. So that's kind of what it brings to mind to me, just the struggle that we've had and never to forget it. So with that in a nutshell, I'll wrap it up and let you go to the next person.
Thank you, Dave. You got a full plate.
Yeah.
We'll be thinking of you.
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Wheeler. I currently serve as the theater manager for Spectrum Theater here at GRCC. I've been at the college now. This is going on my 5th year. What Black History Month means to me, I guess, I just think back to when I was growing up in elementary school, just the lessons we were taught. So I guess the knowledge of kind of what Dave said, the struggle we had before, but also the many Black inventors and civil rights activists that came before us that really made our lives the way they are today. So yes, acknowledging them, but we always acknowledge them no matter what outside of February. So yeah, and thank you for having me today.
Absolutely, thank you. And last but not least, Andre. We still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was just saying, I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. My laptop is for whatever reason not letting me be audible. Anyway, to me, first of all, my name is Andre Fields. I'm a counselor here at GRCC. When I say counselor, I basically provide personal counseling as well as career counseling. Also, facilitate workshops related to like managing depression, stress, anxiety, racism, all kind of different topics that a good percentage of our students encounter on their road to, their professional goals. To me, Black History Month is just I guess it's an isolated month dedicated to helping Black people remember their beauty, their struggle, their strengths, and all the things that make us, in my mind, powerful and influential as a people. I think for the other 11 months, we go through so much through society that sometimes, you can lose track of where we've been and the progress we've made. So I think I look at it as a great way to remind me of my ancestors who I'm accountable to, but also the future generations, that somebody helped us out, the people that are sitting here now, and we got to make a space for the next generations.
All right, thank you so much for those introductions. So we're just gonna dive right on in. So when we think about history, we often think about roots and where we can come from. So this first question is generated specifically your roots and your backgrounds of growing up. So can you share some pivotal moments or life lessons growing up that have helped shape you for who you are or into who you are and your identities?
Yeah, I can go. Jamillya, again, thanks for the question. My parents are from the South, by way of Mississippi, and I was born in Mississippi. I was 6 months old, and we left Mississippi to come to Ohio, where they went into the steel factory. That's when it was part of the field of factory movement for the Blacks in the South. And so they started giving us jobs and started giving African-American men jobs in the steel mills, and they were able to come up here and make great wages. So that's how I got to Ohio. But one of the lessons that I guess helped shape me was my parents, where they expected you to do the right thing and be right by people. And you have to be accountable to yourself. Don't let nobody tell you, something that's wrong, and you do it because you got a mind of your own. You need to make decisions for yourself. And that's one of the things that helped shape me, because I would never let anybody tell me something about somebody that would make me dislike them. I had to judge people for myself. So that's one thing I got from my mother, that's how I was sort of shaped. And so that's kind of the Mississippi roots and those values. My parents were spankers, and I got my share of spankers, believe me, and but it helped shape me to who I am today. So thanks.
I guess I'll go. So I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. Moved here to Grand Rapids, I believe I was 7 years old. As far as background goes, the stereotypical Black background, I always sum it up as poor, worst neighborhoods, worst schools, abuse, all those things that you hear about. I just happened to be lucky enough to go through that, but made it out. And I always knew I didn't like my environment for whatever reason, but I just knew I didn't know anything. I didn't have the inspiration to think about how do I get out of it. But the first spark of inspiration that I always will remember, and it's interesting because it was related to Black History Month, but I used to go to Camp Hall Elementary. And so if you guys from Grand Rapids, you'll know that I think the only school I know of in Grand Rapids that's literally in the middle of the projects back during the crack epidemic. And so one month they were doing, it was called the Black is Beautiful Month. And one day they highlighted Martin Luther King. And I just remember, I remember walking home, and I just remember feeling so like empowered and just feeling like I can do it just from hearing him speak. And I know it's probably cliche to people, but I feel like that's the first time in my life that I really felt an external force impact my internal self. So that was good for me. Of course, I got to shout out my mom. I learned through observation, resilience through her. one day I don't, I jokingly tell my kids know when to give up. You got to know when to give up. But for certain things, that's not an option. You got to identify which things are not an option. And when I identify something that giving up is not an option, I think just from watching my mom and her be resilient is something I can tap into.
Well, I'll follow that right up with me being a product of the South Side of Chicago. As Andre mentioned, being poor, we were past poor. Living in the projects on the South Side. You know anything about the South Side? It's not just a good times mantra, but it's a way that I lived. Having both parents in the house, but one parent was the hustler, and that was my dad. My mother tried to keep all of her kids together. I'm a product of 9 children, and I learned a lot through my dad, learned a lot from him. He taught us so much, but the one question that you asked, Jamillya, was about pivotal moments. Pivotal moments was seeing death. Pivotal moments was banging, robbing, stealing, hustling. That's what I learned. But what turned it around was seeing somebody close to me get shot. I was not around during the crack epidemic. I was in the military, but Chicago shaped me. And I'll be transparent with you all. Chicago shaped me to be suspect of people, because being suspect of a lot of people, even though they look like us, they don't have the good intention to help us. Because again, when you raise up around hustlers and pimps, and things of that nature, you have a tendency not to trust anybody because they're gonna be out to try to get you. But I learned a good lesson when I joined the service that taught me it gave me a global mentality, not to always look at people as suspects, but look at them for who they are. And that's what makes me who I am today. I don't do that anymore. I'm more of a loving, caring, considerate person. And not to sound sappy, but being the fifth son of 9, I'm the one that they come to, because I'm more logical than the majority of my family. And when you see alcohol and drugs in majority of your siblings, that made me pivot, because I never drank, never smoked. I've done some other things that I'm not going to mention on this platform, but that made me who I am, and I think Jamillya, you and I have talked about that, and I think Dave and Andre, I've shared some of that with you, those deep, dark conversations that we've had. But to shape me and to make me who I am so thankful from where I'm from.
So for me, I also am from the Chicagoland area, but so I grew up outside of Chicago in the south suburbs of the city. So for a big moment for me, and what has shaped me currently to who I am is honestly moving to Grand Rapids. I moved here about almost 7 years ago with my older brother, and where I grew up, had the fortunate enough opportunity to go to school with a lot of my friends. They look like me, or for us, it was a very diverse environment growing up and very wonderful. My parents gave us a great childhood and upbringing. But then when I moved here, kind of on my own, being in a place like Grand Rapids, coming from where I did, it was totally a culture shock, and I learned a lot about the world, and I still am figuring out, and I learned a lot about myself. But yeah, not having that safetyness of that, I guess, that bubble that I once had, where I wasn't going to be the only Black male, at the store at the time, in my class or in a meeting. But yeah, I would definitely have to say for me, moving to Grand Rapids, it just really taught me a lot about the world and how people are going to view me and treat me, especially when you're one of the only ones there. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing and for your transparency in that response. And what came to mind is that whole idea or concept of roses growing from concrete and what that looks like and what that may mean for us when we hear that saying. So I wanted to to highlight that and also thank you all for being very transparent in that response. Before I move on, I also wanted to make a quick pivot to our audience. If at any point something may resonate with you, or you may have a question for the panelists today, please feel free to use the question chat, and we will be sure to get to your question as well to make it more engaging and interactive. So please utilize that feature. All right, so the next question stems around something that we often may or may not talk about in our own households, may or may not have talked about growing up, is this idea of mental health and what that means in our households. So can you share some mental health stigmas or some stigmas that you may even grew up in your Black household or in the Black household just in general, and what actions do you actually take to, in opposition to some of those stigmas, or try to break some of those stigmas?
I could start off with that one. I know, so for me growing up, my parents, they weren't, for them, that term mental health wasn't even really a concept we discussed. You know, you really weren't sad, you know, just kind of got over, or you prayed about, you know, my mom still to this day, you know, talks about take it to God. She still sends us scriptures. Every morning I get a text from actually with her. We have a group chat, my brothers and I, but we really didn't discuss mental health. But I'm saying that to say, as currently they're getting better about it, and it's something that we actually do discuss. And they say, you know, if you're feeling sad, take time for yourself, you know, take a day off, you know, just take a breath, don't be anxious. So it's happy to see my parents on that journey to understanding what mental health and the importance of it is. I mean, initially though, growing up, it was something they even had a concept of because their parents didn't discuss those things in the household. So I'm happy they're at a point where we can talk about it. But yeah, growing up initially, it wasn't a thing. You know, you were supposed to pray. We went to church every Sunday, very heavily involved in the church. That's where you take your anxiety. That's where you take your depression. And I think there's still value in that, absolutely. But I think there's also more to that. That can't be the only solution to all your issues. So yeah, that's that'll be my experience.
Yeah, Aaron, if I could jump in here, just that in there may have been some mental health issues in my household. I also have a family of 9. I have 8 other siblings, and so there may have been some mental health things going on, but we just didn't have it diagnosed, you know, where we knew that was the issue. Like Jonathan's saying, you know, it just wasn't really discussed. But now that you get that, now when you got educated on it, you look back, you say, man, that person may have been going through some mental issues. So again, it's just one of those things where just what, you know, in the Black household, especially folk from the South, didn't really think in terms of mental health. So when they couldn't handle something, they just, you know, acted out, or they didn't take time for themselves. And so I think your mother got something going there, Jonathan, with sending you those scriptures every day. And sometimes they really help.
They do. They're very comforting at times. So I definitely would have to agree.
Yeah. So.
Well, for me, mental health was never an issue. Well, I take that back. That wasn't the name that we gave it. It was just, you just couldn't handle certain things. And what I mean by that, when you are raised in a family of addicts and they act out, today they call it a mental health issue. But then it was just heroin addiction, crack addiction, alcohol, acid, all those drugs back in the 60s and 70s that, you know, today may have led to some mental health issues, or it may have been so strung out that they needed help. But most Black folks from where I'm from never had to seek counseling. Counseling was taboo in the 60s and 70s. Black folks never did it. And as Jonathan said, prayer was the only thing that we knew. Pastors were more engaging with the families. And if they encountered any situation like that, then they wouldn't give them medication, the ADHD medicine, which is new. ADD, that wasn't a thing back in the 60s and 70s. That was just, you're lazy. They never gave that a title, but today they do. So the mental health is just a new uniform and a new suit or a new dress. But back in the day, it was never a mental health thing. It was just that, okay, you were strung out on whatever drug of choice and you dealt with it. We never had to seek a doctor on that unless you really had a spiral. Then you went to see a doctor about that. So, for me, the mental health thing was never an issue then, but now it's more prevalent now because, again, PTSD is critical and you're looking at someone with it. So that being raised in a city like Chicago, I think a lot of folks that's in the neighborhood, or as we call the hood, you're going through PTSD. And that could be a form of mental health.
I think the biggest stigma growing up for me, definitely the biggest one was what go on in this house, stay in this house. So it's kind of like counseling in and of itself was indirectly not an option. Of course, it wasn't talked about, but if it was, I'm sure it would have been also we can't afford it. Also, the people that I know in my family that struggle with mental illness, or even the people in the neighborhood, it was always something that they did wrong. It wasn't never just like that this person struggled with anxiety, depression. They did something wrong, or it's just they're weak-minded. I remember I used to hear my mom say that, like, that person just weak-minded, and that's more or less more of an insinuation than empathy. I don't know if she would still talk that way about it because she's since got a degree in psychology, but when someone would express anxiety or depression, you being weak-minded, and that was kind of the narrative. And the same with, I think, everybody else, take it to God, get that sin out your life. you might be okay. That's kind of what the narrative we got. So.
So my follow-up, because some of you may be caretakers, parents, or mentors. So what are some of the things that you try to instill to either break some of those stigmas, or kind of talk about this idea of mental health that isn't or wasn't really shared or talked about much for you all growing up, but is very much so prevalent in our conversations today with working with on a college campus, working with youth, or working with students of color and specifically?
I go back to the beginning. If I'm engaged with or interacting with a student, I don't assume that they're dealing with, because I've lived long enough to kind of self-identify some of the needs that some of the students that I encounter may have. I don't make no assessments because, again, I'm not qualified to do it. I know the right people, and one is on the panel because he's qualified to make those assessments. I just don't assume that they're dealing with some issues because I know they're combat veterans. I know that they're dealing with some issues. I know it hands down, and it may not be as evident as some of us may see it, but give them enough time, put them in the right situation, you'll see it. But I wouldn't call it mental health. I mean, mental illness, or, whatever the case, mental illness. I wouldn't call it mental illness. I may call it misunderstanding, because that's a lot of our student veterans. And I'm speaking from that vein, the student veteran vein. They just need somebody to talk to release some of the pressures. And again, if we get into that as we go on this panel, then I know we may uncover some things. But I don't assume that, oh yeah, this person dealing with some mental illness. No, they're not. You just probably hadn't gotten to the root cause of why, because we don't do a deep dive into, some of us, I say that, don't do a deep dive in a situation. We just assume because they don't act like us, which is not fair.
Could you repeat the question? Just remind me.
Absolutely. So the question kind of stemmed around was a follow-up of, granted that most of you shared, it was either not talked about as much, or it looked very different back then as it does now. So how do you all as leaders, specifically when it comes to students or our youth, or you may have children or people who look up to you, what are some of the things that you do to help mold and shape conversations around mental health?
Totally. I'm absolutely with Patrick. I would encourage our students, seek our on-campus counseling. We have Andre, who's awesome advocate. But I mean, also just creating a space for students to just come and sit down and just have a conversation, and then just always encourage them that you don't be afraid to seek out therapy. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and yeah, it's definitely a great solution. So I'm always encouraging students just to seek the help that you need. Don't be ashamed of that. So yeah.
And Jamillya, I saw today, even with you and your conversation with the student that came in, it seemed like I'm not necessarily saying it was a mental health issue, but he came in to talk to you, and that's probably all he needed. He left there happy. And so I try to make time for students and make time for family members as well. When you see them having maybe some issues that you need to sit down and listen to them sometimes. And I'm not the best listener, but I try when it comes to my family. So, yeah. And sometimes some students that I've coached or I'm mentoring on campus, try to sit down and listen to them, because they may need you to listen.
Absolutely.
So,
All right.
I'll defer it on Andre at this point.
No, I would echo what you said, Dave. Just having an ear, an empathetic ear, a patient ear, an active ear. So many students during our first session, they talk about the history of their problems, and one of the last questions is, after they tell me what are their goals for themselves, I'll ask, how do you think counseling can help you accomplish this goal? And a good majority, I want someone to talk to. I want to hear a different perspective. So it doesn't, you don't have to have a degree to patiently listen to someone and try to understand and empathize with them. And I think if you could just start there by listening, that's a good start. I think I'm advantaged when it comes to, especially talking to Black males. That's kind of my area of focus for psychology. Also, just using my experiences when I'm talking with them. Because of my Black male experience, I had a latitude to also be deliberate about helping a Black male see how their social experiences may be impacting their motivation, their faith, their perspectives, their goal setting, all of those things, their addictions, and just kind of making that connection as well. And I think that's about it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. Some of you kind of talked about stereotypes or hinted at it in your previous response. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, specifically when it comes to the Black identity or the Black male in the media. So could you share some of the personal challenges that you see when it comes to stereotypes of your own identities and how it's represented in the media? And then what do you try to do to either break up some of those stereotypes or try to turn it into a different narrative that may be more positive or have hope or be progressive in a sense?
I tried some time ago when I was younger. I tried to fit in to so many circles, and I was a square. I tried to fit in, tried to be accepted. I was always taller than everybody. And when I came into who I really was, and to be able to articulate my feelings, thoughts, emotions, it's a double-edged sword, Jamillya, when you try to be down with the brothers, but then you try to fit in with the population. That's the double-edged sword. They look at you, they want you to be down with them. And then when you with the masses, they look at you and here's the stereotype: you're aggressive because you speak your mind, you're aggressive. So you ask the question about how do you change or how do you break or challenge those stereotypes right now? And I may be the only one on the panel who's going to say it. I don't. Because they're going to make the assumption and the opinion that they're going to make. And I have to be true to who I am. So the stereotype that all Black men are, ... I don't try to prove them wrong. I can have the discussion with anybody, but going forward, I don't try to fit into anybody's circle. I'm still a square. I don't try to fit in. I just try to be who I am. I try to be the best that I can be, as long as I'm here on earth.
And Patrick basically said what I was going to say, so I guess I'll go next and keep it simple. I think it's very important because being an educated Black man, you are sometimes walking the line, meaning like this weekend I hung out with my homeboys. It was like 20 or 30 of us all grew up in the hood. The whole night was about everybody reminding everybody that I have a PhD to where it gets uncomfortable. Then in the arena, you got all it's almost like you don't fit in either way. You kind of start to feel like what they call it, like you're just not fitting, like you said, Patrick, a square trying to get into a circle. So same thing Patrick said, I don't try to fit in anybody's circle. I was born who I am. As long as I'm not sabotaging, I'm gonna stay who I am. I'm gonna die how I am. And it keeps my stress down. It keeps me from being fake. And it keeps me being as authentic as possible. And I guess I want to say this, as it relates to stereotypes. I think growing up, you know, is for Black males, especially that go through fatherless households, it's very easy to fall into that stereotype. And I just remember, like, now I'm too old to let a rapper influence me, but I remember being an adolescent and trying to find an identity. And rappers are literally the guys, the males that are instructing me. And it leads to a lot of confusion. It leads to a lot of mistakes and a lot of consequences. So I just want to throw that out there, that their stereotypes can be very damaging to the psychology of a Black male. And so if you're a parent, it's going to be important for you to, I won't say, for instance, music, not allow your child to listen to it, but have conversations with them about it. Like my oldest son, he's 27. We would listen to the same music. Sometimes I would pause it. And I said, you heard what he said? I said, yeah. I said, tell me why that's not a good decision. And he would just say, okay, it don't make sense, but then he would break it down. And so, but when you don't have no opportunities to have a structured conversation with your father or even any male influence, it can get like real slippery out there. So anyway, I'm done.
I think both Andre and Patrick made some great points, and I have to agree with them. I mean, for me, I just feel like it's important just to be who you are. But I know growing up, just, you know, in the media, you know, we are, you know, stereotyped as aggressive or one type of way. So seeing that, you know, I definitely had to figure out like what that meant and how was I supposed to act as a Black man. But I mean, I was lucky enough to, you know, still am to have parents who, you know, just encourage me, just, you know, be yourself. You don't have to fit into whatever society trying to make you. So I'm thankful for that. So I just, you know, just being myself, be yourself, just be who you are. Don't be ashamed of that. But yeah, that's for me, because I know between my brothers and I, you know, my brothers act one way. They were the ones who like to rap music and all that stuff. And I still like rap music, but I didn't like it as much as they did. So for me, I was like, well, you know, why don't I? I'm supposed to like this because, you know, this is, you know, we're Black. But then I'm like, you know, it's literally not that deep. You're supposed to just, you know, enjoy what you like. Don't be ashamed of that. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, echoing everything everybody else said. But again, I try to not stereotype people myself. And the only person I can control is myself. So when there's something out there, I try to dig deeper for information from people as to why they're doing what they're doing and not have them fall into a certain bucket, you know, or we looking at them differently or whatever. So I try to dig for deeper understanding as to what their purpose is and, you know, what their mission is and those kind of things. Not stereotype them as being in a certain class or whatever. So I try to stay away from all those things. So, and with that, that's about it in a nutshell.
Thank you. All right. So next question is around this idea of narrative justice, and just a little bit of context behind it. I had listened to another panel where it was, of course, of Black males who talked about this concept or idea of storytelling and how our stories are told in the media and what is either being said, what is not being shared, or what it is that gets the attention of national news. Then we also, on the other hand, talk about how the pandemic made us all sit down to realize what's probably or already have been happening, but now it's being highlighted in a different way because we're all sitting in a house and we have no choice but to see it. So in those two ideas or in going through a pandemic, in your own words, when it comes to media, how would you define narrative justice for Black males?
For me, Jamillya, I think we have to corral that narrative. The masses, you want to call it Big Brother, they define that narrative for us based on what they see, what they hear, what they encounter, what they experience. My hope, and I don't want to get on this tangent, but my hope is that we rally together to draw in, to pull in, to corral, as I stated, corral that narrative, to help them understand we're not what you think, we're not what you see. We're greater than what you peg us to be. All of us, and if I could for a moment, all of us aren't savages. All of us have some good heads on our shoulders. And I'm looking at 3 on the panel that have good heads on their shoulders. So when they stereotype or when they, throw that narrative out there that this is us, we have to rally and say, no, this is not us. This is what you make us out to be. Or are you afraid that if we rally and if we pull in that narrative, if we change that narrative as a solidified front, we will be a threat. So I think that's what needs to happen. That narrative definitely needs to be harnessed and brought back in.
And I think, Jamillya, as far as narrative justice, I think that, the media can definitely, portray a person the way they even, get footage of the person. They could claim you as being guilty of whatever they're accusing you of. I think justice would be to tell the whole story gets told as if this person was very angry, then why was he upset? Why was this person upset? And he just come in there and just start tearing the place up, or what happened? And I think a lot of times that the narrative's not told, the whole story's not told, and just half of the story's told, and that's how people get it wrong sometimes. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I think narrative justice would be, is to have the whole story told, if that makes sense.
When I think of narrative justice, which I just looked it up, I never heard of it before this, but it to me, a big mistake that I feel could be made is Black people focusing their narrative on proving to white people that we are inferior. And I think we should put the energy in teaching ourselves and each other that we are not inferior. And an example I would give, America has always been abusive towards Black people. It's kind of like a woman that has a husband that's going to always be abusive to her. At some point, we got to empower her to leave instead of wasting our time trying to get him to stop putting his hands on her. So a good narrative justice for me would be a narrative that's created by Black people for Black people, and not focusing on, just trying to get your enemies. I'm saying, I'm speaking of American racism, trying to get American racism, a whole ancient system. That's not, I won't say ancient, but a few centuries old system to change within the lifetime of our children or grandchildren. I think that's far-fetched personally. And again, that's what I'm saying. Narrative justice for Black people and for the purpose of empowering Black people.
I definitely would I agree. I think that's important. Like kind of Patrick said, us corralling together and controlling our narrative. This is also my first time hearing that term. But I think it's important for us to come together. And I think what we really have to do, and I guess what's unfortunate about it is that when Black people feel as if they remove themselves from, this narrative that the Big Brother has created for us. They don't feel the need to help out their fellow Black men. They feel they rose above that, so they don't have to bring you up with them. But I think that ultimately we really need to stick together and start controlling our own story more. So I agree with everything everybody said and kind of sum it up all together. So yeah, great point.
But if I could, before Dave jump in, that whole narrative, justice, when it's stated in a community that is a far reach from where we are, we're in Grand Rapids, and most media, they use that narrative publicly. It's kind of hard to really get to that news outlet and let them know that's not what we're about. That's not what we said. And I understand most media outlets are there to make money, so they're gonna spin it. And when do we send that out to them and let them know that's not what we stated? Now it happens in sports, especially after a game. Media ask questions that are open-ended, and they misquote what the athlete said. And they said, depending on the athlete, they'll let them know that's not what I said. But if we don't stand on all 10, we're gonna fall for it. We're gonna let them say what they're gonna say. Forgive me, Dave, go ahead.
No, I kind of said what I had to say. Thank you.
So, leading into this idea of empowerment, would you all share some insights or some things that you personally do to empower generations younger than you or our youth coming up under us all, or things that you try to instill from a more positive perspective when it comes to some of the things that we touched on already in terms of stereotypes, the narrative that is often told for us that we have to either reshape or tell our own truths or find spaces to have a voice. Any of those things could be a topic where you could essentially help someone younger or generations up under us all in how you try to empower them or support them.
Yeah, I take a crack at that, Jamillya. What I try to do is when there are young folks that I've been at the college 33 years. I was didn't tell you that in my opening statement, but I've been to college 33 years, and I try to help young people as much as I possibly can, and I try to hire folks as much as I can that need breaks. I know that sometimes we don't get all the breaks as far as hiring people of color. So I try to, whenever possible, I try to make sure that I do that, and I try to mentor them. Even though, like for example, there may be things that people are doing that's wrong, and I know it's going to hurt them. I try to take my experience and try to not let them run into a wall, because I know how a place, a corporation this large can just eat you up. And I've seen it happen to people, and I try to avoid them from crashing like that if I can. And I try to say things that are encouraging to the people that allow me to get, get into their heads. I try to encourage young folks to do the right thing, to put themselves in the best position that they can for upper mobility. Especially here at GRCC. I know how tough it is to get there. It took me 33 years to get where I got. And I'll tell people all the time, that's why when someone gives you something to do, look and see how well you can do it, because your next job may be predicated on that. So when you get an opportunity to shine, and a lot of times people don't get that opportunity, try to do things the best you can, because you never know who's looking or who's watching. And so that's what I try to tell young folks, and I try to uplift them that way. We have a Black Males Conference where we'll be uplifting about 1,200 students on May 8th. We're looking forward to having a 2-hour conversation with these folks, facilitating 2-hour conversation on choices, changes, and challenges. And every time we get a chance to get in young folks here, we try to do that. I try to do that. So, but again, people don't, sometimes the message for me is not as clear as what I'd like it to be sometimes. So maybe I need to work on some of those things. But again, I try to uplift young folks as much as I can because I had someone do that to me. Yep. So that's it. I'll wrap it up with that.
Is the question about modeling in front of, is that the question, Jamillya?
In a sense, yeah. So it's basically, it could be modeling, or it could be specific things that you, or initiatives that you're a part of, things that are externally or internally, or conversations or mentorship. It could be a wide gamut of things of how you demonstrate that empowering or support.
Well, mine is, I'm a part, and again, it's going to sound real corny, but again, I know everyone on the panel can understand this. I model life. That's what I belong to. And what I mean by that, any young person I come in contact with, again, I'm of age, and I've lived a long life, fruitful life, a healthy life. And one thing I can say in a nutshell to everyone that's listening, I never let my private life become public. That's how you can really model that. You never let your private life become public. Because what I do behind the closed doors of my home, I never bring it to work. And if me and Jonathan, because he looks like the younger of the tribe, if it's he and I'm gonna give him nothing but gems. And if he said, Patrick, how did you make it? I'm gonna give him nothing but gems. So I don't, to belong to an organization, and again, no disrespect to none of the organizations that's out there that's doing big things. But if there are no results from no results in the outcomes, it's just talking. We've had some great initiatives here on campus that was dissolved. But I think all of us who have some experience, Dave said he had 33 years to get where he is, and I know he didn't let his private life become public. If he did, he wouldn't be here. So I think that's one thing. That's how we model going forward. That's how we model to those that are looking at us. And I know this is a panel for Black History Month, so I'm gonna keep it Black. For all these young brothers that's out here looking at Dave, Andre, myself, and some may talk to Jonathan, but mostly the three of us, because we're older, they want to know how you made it. How you made it 33 years, how you made the PhD. Patrick, how did you get a doctorate of divinity? And I tell people when I got it, I wasn't supposed to make it. So for me to model every day, and again, it sounds like I'm talking to the panel, but I'm looking right at Jamillya because you know me. We know each other, parents and all that. But if you don't make your private life public, a lot of people will always mimic some of the things that they see that you do publicly in order to be successful. See, I'm gonna start preaching and I really don't want to.
I think only thing I can talk about is, some of the things I've done in the past and what some of my plans are. But in the past, to kind of empower Black males, one of my big things has been speaking. I've spoken to, I don't want to sound bragful, but I've spoken to a bunch of groups of Black males and just talking to them about life and overcoming. I have a whole PowerPoint called Overcoming Everything. But usually when I'm giving presentations, it's one subject at a time. But just having that privilege, which that door started to be open because of GRCC, but it now has expanded, was not as much since COVID, but speaking, I talk a lot to Black males about career and professionalism. I always tell them, I say, hey, I'm not the perfect guy. You might not agree with everything I do, but I always say I can show you how to get a degree and a job. And so a lot of times when I meet with Black males, especially on the college campus, that's their biggest concern. They've absorbed the narrative that in order for me to thrive in this country, I need an education. But now getting an education has become the hardest thing that on their plate. And so I think I'm privileged to be able to talk to guys about career development. I give them career assessments. I've written books, more than 10 books related to Black male success and the different principles and things like that they need to digest. I had a Black mentoring program at GRCC previously, working slowly on getting it started back in the community. That's something that's near and dear to my heart because I believe in connection. I believe in a support system that involves more than book presentations, but involves like deliberate and intentional connection. And so I think those, and then I guess modeling, you know, I think I'm a good model for, again, getting a degree. That's what I always tell my students that I talk to. I said, no matter what you heard about me, they're gonna also have to say Dr. Andre Phillips. No matter what I do, that's what one thing they can't take from me. And so, you know, I think like Patrick said, you know, present yourself in a way that's going to make you still relevant. And for everybody, that's something different. But I think that's very important because you know, you can't cancel yourself in certain ways and make yourself not a model to certain people. So yeah.
My dad has always taught me that, you know, like you said, don't let your public life or your private life become public. So I think what both Andre and Patrick kind of alluded to is just a very strong point. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to be encouraging and like, you know, like I say, I am younger and I'm still learning along this journey, but I have, you know, I do have some enough life experience to be able to talk to some students and just, you know, encourage them, you know. So yeah, it's just being there for students, I guess, for me at least. So yeah.
Thank you. All right, just a couple more questions before we wrap up here. A lot of you talked about support systems and a mentor or having someone that kind of helped you along the way, or if you stepped off of your journey or your path, you might have had some guidance to get back on. So could you share about some of those characteristics or some of those mentors that helped you outside of family and what they instilled in you that you try to either continue on teaching others or that just still resonate with you today?
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Jamillya. You know, I had a coach that at the community college that he told me when I first came up here from Ohio to go to school. He told me, he said, Dave, and this is sort of a stereotype thing he said, but he didn't know it. But he said that you know, he basically said most of the Black students that come up here to play basketball don't finish their degree. And he said, but I think you can. And he said, I'd really like to see you work harder in the classroom to get it done, because he said you could possibly be the coach here one day. And guess what? I was, you know, and so he made sure of it. You know, once I got my degree, you know, he was like, here you go. You can do this. And so a lot of times when things are tough, I just resort back to that to say, you know, you get, you know, what, I mean, if something is worth having, it's worth working for. And I just keep telling myself, that's why at the college, when they asked me to do different things, you know, it's just, I take it as they got confidence in me, you know. And sometimes, I mean, when my parents instilled the confidence in me, and I never forget, Steve Ender said this to me. He said, Dave, he said, you got the type of confidence that only a parent can instill in a kid, nobody else. And I was very flattered by that, because that was true. My parents told me that I could be anything I wanted to be, do anything I wanted to do. If I wanted to coach, whatever, I could do it. And that's why when they asked me to do something, you know, I kind of jump on it as a challenge. I take it as a personal challenge, even though sometimes I should probably say no. Hey, don't want to do it, but I do it. And again, it may be the death of me, but I do it. And but so again, parents instilling that confidence in you that you can do things and you can work through tough times. And you're gonna have tough times because every day ain't gonna be no crystal ball. And Andre probably can agree with me when I say this, is that, you know, America don't care about your personal life. You know, they don't care. I mean, you know, you look around, you worry about what people think. I mean, they don't care about you if you've had a rough night. They expect you to come in and you on stage every day. They expect you to come ready. And as Black folks, we got to do that. Got to come ready. And so, yeah. So my parents, and then the coach that influenced me, and the things I go back on when I have tough times. Yeah.
I have to agree with that. It starts in the home. And I really don't care if there's a 2-family home or just a single parent. If she or he is a strong individual, they're going to instill.
Yeah.
My support system started with my dad, because he was the backbone. My mother was the voice of reason. But and from that point on, I always had a very strong support system. Through challenges, through successes, I had a very strong support system, and I still do. Now the tables have turned. I'm the support for a lot of the system. But one thing that I can share that when I was teaching here on campus, and I used it when I was teaching at Davenport, MCC, I always tell my students, especially the Black students, there's a snippet from The Great Debaters that Forrest Whitaker used, and when he told his son, "You do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do." And I love that phrase. And I used to tell him that you do what you got to do. Go to education. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be setbacks. But once you get done with that degree, and Doc said it, that's something they can't take from you. So right now, and again, because Doc and I know each other very well, he can agree with that. There's nothing they can take from him. But he did what he had to do. So now Dr. Andre Fields is doing what he wanted to do. And I have to sing his praises because, we were on that campus team together. And that's something that I shared with those young brothers. Do what you got to do now. So when you walk across the stage, there's something they can't take, and you can do what you want to do. So the support system is us. You ask for the next generation, the support system is us.
I remember for me, my first year of college, I being first year out of my parents' home, definitely, first year of college, I was having a little too much fun. But I remember walking through the student center, and the pastor we had on campus, he was a Black male, and I hadn't really spoken to him prior to this. I guess there wasn't a lot of Black students. I was at DePaul for my first year in Chicago, and there were a few of us. There were enough of us, but enough of us to be familiar with who we all are. But so never had a chance to speak with him directly, but he stopped me, it was after a night hanging out with my friends, we were in the student center. He stopped me, he was like, "Hey, you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Just come talk to me." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Okay." And I guess he could see, when he said that to me, I felt like for the first time somebody really saw me. It was just this odd moment. But then when we finally had a chance to sit down and talk, it turned to this therapy session, and he really helped get me off a path that I was kind of headed down that wasn't going to be a very good one. I guess, just being at my parents' house, I was just a little, just thrust into the real world right away, and just was vulnerable to some experiences I shouldn't have been. But I just always remember him just, telling me to be encouraged and telling me to basically do what I have to do to get this degree and to move forward with my life. So I really, as much as I love my parents, I really not think about my parents, thinking back on, I could speak how awesome that, the advice that they've given me, it wasn't really like waking up and have somebody else kind of come and check me and be like, "Hey, handle that, get it together." That I wasn't able to see the strength and the wonderful confidence my parents had instilled in me. So, yeah.
Appreciate that, Jonathan. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Andre, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
As it relates to having a mentor, so I've never had one single person in any, take me under their wing for a long period of time, if that makes sense, like having structured conversations and things like that. But I've had many people who have, if you look at life like a book, and on every page there's a challenge, there's always been a character in a page that has encouraged me and in their own way given me direction. Even I've been working with Pat and David for years. It's names they've said to me, they never would know that it inspired me, but yet it did. So
I know it did.
Really, Andre? Really?
Especially you, David.
I know we've had some conversations. I know that.
Oh yeah. But it's just like those moments, and then just to support, just even on campus, it's probably about 5 or 6 people who that they would never know that they give me mentoring, inspiration all the time. So I think that when I think about that, because people always ask me who was your mentor, and I had this one guy. His name is Lonnie Duncan. He's as close as I can say was like a one-on-one. We just didn't necessarily meet enough over the years, but he was just one of those persons that just knew how to impact me. So, but outside of that, it's just more like moments. And so I think that comes from me from not having a father around. So it's like you just learn how to not look for it, and you just take it as it comes and keep it moving. But it has worked for me. Another thing that's worked for me, I call it virtual mentoring. And I teach this to a lot of guys that I meet when I'm mentoring, about literally just going on YouTube and identifying preferably a Black male, but it really doesn't have to be, but somebody that has a way of thinking and responding to reality that has worked for them, and it may work for you, and just listening to what they have to say. And it could be somebody you never meet in your life, but there's so many, for instance, successful billionaires in real estate. If you're going in real estate, you might want to buy that person's book or just watch their videos and get some mentoring nuggets for cheap from a person that's probably charging $1,000 a minute. So anyway, said virtual mentoring and just accepting mentoring as it comes to you, accepting that inspiration.
I'll be taking some notes on that. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. So my final question is a 2-part question, and then we'll wrap things up with feedback from our audience. And this question is to really reflective of the first part of it being, could you highlight or emphasize some of the points that were shared today about why these spaces are important, or why is it important for these conversations to happen, or similar, right? For who we are, and not just in Black History Month, but ongoing. And then the second part of it is how can we continue as GRCC community colleagues to support you in the work that you're doing.
I think it's important to create these spaces because, honestly, it's not a lot of us on this campus, especially Black men, especially who work full time here. Just being transparent with you, it's not a lot of us. So I think these opportunities are rare, and that when we have them, it's important to create that safe space for us. It's important for students to know, especially Black male students, that, they can do this, and that there are people in this campus that look like them and are here to support them. Because, even for myself, I still look around and I don't see a lot of us. So I think that, yeah, it's really important because it's not a lot of us, and we have these opportunities to come together. I think it's just important to keep them positive. And I think that, our colleagues just need to do the same, just constantly make students feel welcome, and that, keep them encouraged and keep them in their classes, make sure that any obstacles they may face here at their time at the institution are removed so they can be successful and walk across that stage at the end of the semester. So yeah, that's my answer.
Sorry, I was muted. I think it's important to create these spaces where people can share, and they can share openly and freely, and not have to worry about, someone not liking what they said or whatever. But I do think it's important to create these kind of spaces. We had a dean's interview today, and the particular dean was saying that candidates was saying that they had to create these spaces she was from a school out in Iowa. So they had to create these spaces so that they could communicate. There was only a few Blacks there, and they created a little group that got larger and larger as more African American was hired. They brought them right into the group, but the group got very large to the point where they had a major support group, and they encouraged all the people of color that came into the college to join this support group because they needed to be able to vent when it was time. Yeah, they needed to be able to to vent to other people that could understand the struggles they were going through. She said it was very it's very intimidating to go into a room full of deans and they're all Caucasian, and they don't know how intimidating that is just walking into the room. So, and they created a space where they could talk and vent and no kind of doing, and that made it tolerable for her. She said she's able to stay there longer because of that support group. So I think important, support groups are very, very important to put in place and to be respected. So, but that's my take for the day. I think if this, as you said, this was the last question. This was
before we wrap up. Yes.
Oh, okay. This was very therapeutic for me today. Thank you. You don't know what I got out of this. So yeah, so this is good. This was good for me. I haven't done this in a long time. So thank you. Thank you for your vision on this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think these spaces are very important. I know being a minority, being somewhere where when you are the minority in number wise, it can be like by default isolating, alienated. And it's like, it's kind of human nature that when you're somewhere where you don't see your history or people that look like you or your vernacular or your mannerisms, all the different things that make culture beautiful, but that, for instance, that Black people have, when you're in an environment where that's all of a sudden absent or very limited, and then not only that, it's within a community that belittles and inferiorizes all of those things that I just mentioned, you can be feeling like you're on an island, and of course that's not psychologically healthy. And so it's important to have a space where a group of people can go and talk about their experiences, the way that they think, the way that they want to express themselves without feeling judged or put under a microscope. Because I think it's just naturally empowers, kind of like that principle of social capital. And when you're a minority on a campus, some of the biggest social capital you need is just racial affirmation. And if there's not a space where you can be affirmed for being whatever category you are, especially a historically oppressed race, it can be intimidating, like David said. So I think it's very important. But then I think it's also important for once these spaces are created, especially for professionals and students, that they stay healthy. I've been in a lot of all Black spaces that turned into, I hate to say it like this, but just trash, not healthy for anybody. And so it's important that people keep their pride, their jealousy, their personalities out of that space. And so it really takes strong leadership to even govern a space like that. And so, yes, they're very necessary, but, I'm not going to front that some of them can become toxic. And so you got to make sure also, just because it's a room full of Black people, if it's not helping you in your psychological functioning, that might be a Klan rally, but I'm going to be gone. Just how I function.
Well, I had to kind of take kind of like 3 bullets. The safe space. Once upon a time at GRCC, and I know Andre and Dave, you probably remember this, they used to have safe space throughout campus. They had the signs up saying this space you can just be yourself. And I think we need to get back to that. We need to help the masses understand who we are, what we bring, what we're about. If they learn to understand, as this famous author would say, seek to understand then to be understood. Seek to understand who we are, rather than to, as you said it earlier, Jamillya, stereotype what you think we are. Just learn to understand who we are. And we don't have enough time in tonight's session to really unpack all that, because as the 4 of us sit here on this panel and we share what we think through our lenses, it's deeper than the 4 of us. It's been going on for centuries. And Andre said something so pivotal that we have to, regardless of what we've been through, we have to make room, set a plate for the next generation to come up. And we hope that they'll be able to sit at the table and not be looked at as the first two Black quarterbacks ever. rather than we got two superstars as quarterbacks, but I'm gonna bring it back home. Confirmational bias needs to stop. That everybody's not what your ancestors may have thought we were. That needs to stop. That's the masses. So I'm gonna end it on saying this. As Black people, we have to stop struggling in silos. Think about that. We have to stop struggling in silos, and I'll end it right there.
Thank you, Patrick, for the words of wisdom.
Yes, thank
Well
you
said.
so much.
Well said.
Thank you so much. This was a huge learning experience for me, and the vision that I had in creating spaces for our people, because we haven't had a chance to since I've been here. So I've had a lot of takeaway points. I've had a lot of great the notes that I've taken from each of you, and I want to take the time to say thank you for agreeing to participate and sharing a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and what you stand for. It's been very powerful messages that have been shared across the board, each question. I also want to thank our ODEI staff who've been working behind the scenes to help me out with chat management, technology management, and things like that. And last but not least, our media team. Thank you so much for working together with our office, putting together the slides, the music, and just giving us the opportunity to have this conversation on this platform. So I just wanted to say thank you to you all. I'm very appreciative on behalf of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. As I am wrapping up, there is a feedback, and panelists, please feel free to also engage. It should take more than 2 minutes. But I think the feedback form is a QR code that we'll put up here in just a second. But as we are wrapping up and closing, we hope that we would get your feedback so that we can continue to have programs that meet the needs of our audience, meet the needs of our students, and of course, improve as we continue to have programs and events. So please, please, please fill out the form, and I will close us out. Have a good evening, be safe, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Stay warm. It's supposed to have ice storms tonight, so be careful out there, or tomorrow night. Be careful. Be safe.
Right on.
Jamillya, nice job.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Give her a raise. Give her a raise.
Well, she got one coming, like all of us, on July 1. She definitely got that coming. So I wish I had more power. Yep. So hey, thanks everybody.
All right, good seeing everybody. Y'all take care.
Good seeing you, Dre.
Good evening.
Have a good evening. Take care.
Yep. Thank you.